go.
Hello, I'm Nicole from Neon Shed, and today I'm coming to you from Awabakal land. Today is International Day of People with a Disability, and I'm chatting with Paul Nunnari on how to best communicate with people with a disability. Welcome, Paul.
Hey Nicole, thanks for having me. I'm calling in from Thurrock land and just wanted to wish also everyone happy International Day of People with Disability.
Welcome, thank you. Now let me do your intro. So, Paul, you're a Paralympic silver medalist. You flew high as the other Superman on Australia's Got Talent. In 2016, you were named a finalist for the Human Rights Medal, and in 2018 became a Guinness World Record Holder. Amazing. In your downtime, you're a mild-mannered public servant with regional New South Wales who likes a good action movie, pushing marathons, and hitting the dance floor with Emma, the yellow wiggle. Thanks for your time, Paul.
My pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, I've had some fun, so it's great to be able to share some of my experiences with you today. So thanks for having me.
It's amazing background. Now, what does International Day of People with a Disability mean for you?
Yeah, look, I really love International Day. It's just for people who don't know, it's a United Nations sanctioned like official day, just like any other World Day. So it's basically just acknowledging, or celebrating, what people with disability have contributed to community, but also acknowledging as well that there still remains a number of barriers for people with disability, to enable full participation across employment, education, community, and so forth. So it's like, again, identifying those barriers, but also celebrating the achievements. But in the Australian context, at least, it's just, for me, it's just about highlighting what we have achieved, but also, what we can kind of put our nose to the grindstone and still keep working on. And for me, particularly, I think employment of people with disability is something we still need to continue working on. And I know it's a priority, across all tiers of government. And a lot of big businesses are doing great in this space as well. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. So that's something I'm quite passionate about. Also really passionate about, you would have heard in September this year, the Oscars announced that all future movies that will be considered for an Oscar nomination need to actually have a diversity inclusion component. And that means for people with disability, they actually have to have 30% of roles filled by people with disability behind the camera, and a number of secondary roles basically filled by actors with disability. So at the moment, there's a term used, authentic casting, and that means when a person with disabilities authentically cast in a role for someone who might have cerebral palsy, or like someone like me who's got paraplegia. Generally, sometimes those roles have been played by people without disabilities. So, for example, Tom Cruise played Ron Kovic, the paraplegic from the Vietnam War, in Born on the 4th of July. If that film was to be considered for an Oscar in 2025, that role of Ron Kovic would need to be played by a person with disability. So I think that is going to be a game changer for the way people with disability are perceived. And again, something I'm quite passionate about in this space.
I didn't know that, and I love that. That gave me goosebumps. I think that's such an amazing improvement and change that needs to happen. And yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, some people without disability will never know anyone in real life with a disability. That's just sometimes how it goes. I mean, we are 20% of the population, so we're pretty big, but that's a fact. So their experience of a person with disability will be when they see someone on TV or someone on film. And generally speaking, it's a lot more authentic and a lot more real when that person with the disability is actually playing that person with the disability in that role. And I think they bring to that, a real authenticity, but also, a connection. And sometimes you just don't see that or feel that when you watch someone, playing someone in a chair. And a really good example, is Dr. Evil wheeling around in his motorized chair. I mean, I know he used that as a piece of equipment, but how awesome would it be to, have someone with a disability actually playing a real villain as opposed to someone who doesn't? So just a funny example, but something I think we'll be seeing definitely a change in that dynamic moving forward.
Yeah, exciting. Wow. Okay, well, as you know, I've been lucky enough to work with and support a diverse range of people in my career. and I've experienced some of the most talented, passionate, and skilled individuals, yourself included. I've also seen when people don't know how to communicate with someone who's different from them, they may avoid it or accidentally put their foot in their mouth. So I wanted to chat with you today to get your tips on how to best communicate with people who may have a sight, hearing, or physical disability.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And it's actually a really simple response, and that is just have a conversation. Generally, if you've got members in your team who've disclosed as having a disability, it's really important to have that upfront early conversation with them. And for example, I'm a wheelchair user, and generally most workplaces are accessible. But if I was coming into a workplace and and my direct report knew that I was a wheelchair user, but didn't have a conversation in that there might be 1 or 2 steps to get into the building, that's going to really put me in an awkward position. It doesn't make me feel equal, and also doesn't make me feel like, I guess, that my direct report has kind of thought about me. So it's really important, if your staff member has disclosed, to say, hey, look, we've got a really accessible, inclusive workplace, or we don't have a really accessible, inclusive workplace. What can I do to better assist you coming into work and feeling like you can contribute? And a lot of workplaces now have workplace adjustment policies and procedures in place and embedded. So you've got that. And again, just having that simple conversation will put those people at ease, that staff at ease, and you can kind of converse from there. And generally, most people with disability are very used to having those conversations, and they prefer to have that conversation than just have assumptions made about them on what they can or can't do. And that's really important that we don't make those assumptions.
Yeah, assumptions is what gets us into trouble. And sometimes it's someone having a bias or an assumption that, oh, that task might be too difficult for you, so I won't give you that. But they don't have the conversation with you. And maybe it's not difficult for you at all. Maybe it's something that you're really great at or you love doing and you just need a slight adjustment. But when we assume, the saying.
Yeah, no, agreed. Look, and a really simple example, but it's fairly consistent. Look, I drive, but a lot of times I get asked if I can or can't drive, and I just assume that's kind of sometimes a crazy question to ask me. But I think sometimes people just think, oh, if you can't use your legs, you can't drive. But I have hand controls. I can use them on any vehicle, and in my workplace, it was just assumed, that I would be able to kind of do everything, as far as whatever driving requirements I needed to, that I had that conversation was had with me, and I do it as per usual. So again, getting that out in the open and having that conversation has been really great.
And what it really comes down to, right, is treating people with respect and getting them involved as you would any other team member.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you made the point, like we all have differences. And differences are great, and differences actually create, I think, a much more diverse workforce in regards to diversity of thought and ideas. And I think that's a great benefit. But difference shouldn't basically preclude and shouldn't mean that you feel different by being precluded or isolated. And I think that's when you get, staff that become quite potentially quite depressed about that, and want to leave that role because they don't feel like they've been included and have felt like they can contribute to their true potential. So, we hear the term inclusive leadership, and I think all inclusive leaders or all people leaders should lead by example and create a space that's inclusive for everyone, no matter what diverse or difference their workforce has. And create a safe place where people can feel like they can talk about it if they want to, but also if they don't want to, that's okay as well.
Yeah. And you touched on it a little bit there. It's not just a physical disability. It may be a mental injury or illness as well. And being inclusive makes sure it's covering and supporting everyone, because this year we all need that.
Yeah. And look, mental health is massive. And one of the COVID dividends has been, we've been talking about mental health a lot more, and it's actually becoming quite a common and acceptable conversation to have. And I think previously it hasn't been. And, I had the wonderful opportunity to work on the Invictus Games, and, a lot of those returned servicemen and women, come back with post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
And even the term disorder, we don't use that word anymore on PTSD. We just refer to it as post-traumatic stress, because disorder again creates that kind of connotation that it's a negative, and that's a really, even just that word coming off that illness, I think is really good. So I think that, having those types of conversations, looking at mental health as something that we can talk about openly, and, flexible work, I think also adds to, alleviating those stresses potentially around mental health. And, any other kind of considerations that you can bring in regards to the conversation by listening to that person who might be in that situation is only going to be positive.
Yeah, brilliant. This has been really helpful. Thank you so much for your input and tips, Paul. And I really hope that this helps everyone watching improve communications in the workplace.
Yeah, no worries. Look, thanks for having me, Nicole. Again, happy International Day of People with Disability, everyone. And, have those conversations. It's a wonderful place to start. And hopefully you'll start with one and they'll be ongoing and always positive.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.